Hi, this is a medical chatbot using ChatGPT's API calls. As you can see, it starts off pretty simple with a simple standard prompt. This is actually the English version, and we can convert this to Chinese using the upper key here, or simply instead of going to slash chat, we go to ZH endpoint, or the basic would also bring us back to the English version for now. So as we can see, we simply enter a prompt at the bottom here. Let's just say I have a cough. This can be with an enter key, or we can use the button to the right. And as you can see, the screen is based on full, but it actually is responsive based on a much smaller screen size. So let's go with an iPhone, for example, or let's say an iPad Air. Let's go back to our responsive and back to the screen. As you can see, the robot would actually respond with a question based on your prompt, and it gives a few options that we can select. In this case, I will click productive. That's one of the few types of responses that the robot is able to select. Here's another example of a few ranges. So how long? Let's say we've had it for 1 to 2 weeks. The robot's able to also display the current summary. We can only click this once it's done responding. As you can see, this is all of the current data we have collected. Let's just say we made a mistake. So have you noticed any changes? Uh, but this is an example of a multi-select whereby you'd be able to select a few multiple options. Deselecting is pretty simple. We simply click what we selected. Let's say we go with this. It'll update from 14% to a few more percentages. It'll wait a while. And let's say we didn't want green and yellow. We can simply click the undo button. It'll bring us back to the state. And I can say the phlegm was bloody, for example. Moving on, we'll be trying to quickly complete this assessment. I'll try to speed this up by going through. The value is in the decimal sometimes, and even when it does hit 100%, it does not fully go. Now back to here, we see that it's 100%. However, because this is actually a decimal point that gets rounded up, the current value is actually about 99 point something percent. So this should be completed shortly. Let's just speed it up again. Now here, by finishing, what we can do is we can decide to add more additional information based on the condition. But in this case, I'll just go to the summary page, which was the tab that we clicked on top right. And as you can see, all of the data has been collected with a summary at the bottom. And if a patient chooses, they're able to actually edit, make a change, productive cough, or let's say it's actually been 4 weeks, and they can say yes. Or if they were to make any form of changes and a fever, but they decide they would not want that, they can simply click the X again. At the bottom here, we will be adding a name, Bobby Tang, for example, and then we will be submitting this survey. Now that it's been completed for submission, what we'll see on the doctor's end is if we go to slash dashboard, as we can see here now, we're presented to the patient side on the doctor's end. At least it has a few things, namely the first is the Bobby Tang, which is the most recent entry from the data. We have a few other values such as name, main complaint, the date of insertion, and the delete date. It also has a sort button which and filter which currently does not work. It does have a delete that we can click to delete values of the table. This also sends a request to the backend. If we were to come up to this tab, we have a commercial and evaluation, which I'll be showcasing later, and the chat just brings us back to the chat that we just saw. It does have a translate, so it will change the keywords to Chinese, and if we click, it's back to English, for example here. Now let's say we wanted to see what record Bobby Tang had. We can simply click, and as you can see, all of the data is pulled. that the doctor would be able to see. If we want to see, let's say, another patient, in this case, Andy, we'll be able to see some of the past. This is a friend I had, as with Jensen Gao, and of course, there's also Haruki. Now, assuming we want to go to the evaluation side, we can simply click the dashboard. It brings us to the evaluation endpoint. Everything's pretty much the same. We'll be able to delete with the sort function, and also we have a translation feature. But let's just say we want to go to Bobby Tang, and interesting to notice, if we scroll all the way down here, the doctor is able to input and say, this was a very good summary. For example, submit, it gets submitted, and now the backend actually stores that data. On top of that, there's a new button here, which is not in the previous version of the dashboard. It's only in the evaluation, and what it does is if we click this, we actually do get to see the patient's entire chat history. Closing this. If I wanted to see, let's say, Andy's, I'll be able to go back here and see we have a completely different ending based on what they have. You also see some of like the past choices that that the patient could have selected. If we go to, let's say, Haruki, and we click again, we get completely different chat history from him. In this case, this is an example of a range slider that I didn't get to showcase just now in the chat. And what this is, it's a starting values, and it goes by steps. And of course, when I press, it actually sends out to the current value.